it's really interesting that the things that you explain. But what I want to add is also choice, because I saw it with myself.
Yeah.
I had the choice to change, but I choose to stay negative. I choose to be lonely. I choose to be miserable. I choose to be working at a job that I don't like, for
Mhm.
example. It's a choice that we make. And I see a lot of people,
Yes.
they know that they want to change, but still they choose the safe way out.
Yes.
Still keep complaining, oh, my life sucks, oh, this, complaining about this, my boss this, my wife this, my partner this,
Yep.
but we don't change.
Yep. Yeah. That's it. You have to choose to change.
Yeah, exactly. It's a choice. And then when I made the change to, or I chose now to live in a positive way, I feel better. I feel more relaxed. I now am setting boundaries. Welcome to the How to Heart Show, helping men reconnect to the heart and empower others as the leaders they were born to be. I'm Vincent Hazenboom. My mission is to help you speak your truth, own your authenticity, and step into your power. The world needs the raw and authentic man right now. Join us if you're ready to make a change. Hey, what's up, Lions, and welcome to the How to Heart Show. I have a really cool, I always bring the most amazing guests, but today I brought Eleanor Hayward. If I say it correct, I forgot.
Yes. Thank you, Vincent.
And she's a holistic facilitator. And for me, it's like, okay, I don't know really what it is. So I will let Eleanor explain what it is. But what I really like about her is the giving. She always wants to give, she always wants to help you. And she has a really cool story that she wants to share with us. So I'm really looking forward to have her on the show. So, Eleanor, thank you so much for being here.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you, Vincent, for this opportunity. As a holistic facilitator, my basic training was as a registered massage therapist in Ontario. And with my experience of around 20 years of professional practice as a massage therapist or an RMT, working on the body with your physical tissue heal, I became a Reiki master and I studied EFT or emotional freedom technique tapping so I can work acupressure, mental, emotional, spiritual levels into a physical massage. So a combination of body work and inner work, which has been really effective for my patients. I work from B Yoga and Wellness Studio in Burlington. I'm also a workshop facilitator, teaching Reiki and teaching couples to massage each other, which has been lovely to help people connect in their relationship by touch. I'm also a co-leader with the Love Your Vibe Transformation with Elvira V. Hopper, and it's a personal development solution for heart-centered people. So we're working and building a personal development company that we meet primarily over Zoom. So it's an international access, and really loving this new platform, this opportunity to work mentorship skills as a miracle mindset mentor, as a leader of a team. It's been a fantastic opportunity to take my passion and another business as well. So I have two different approaches, hands on and hands off. And I'm really grateful for my opportunity. Thank you for asking, Vincent.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Like I said, I really like your vibe and how you want to help people. But really, today we're going to talk about how we can help men. And I think you have a lot of cool insights that you can help men with. So, can you share in a nutshell more about your life and how it all started and how it unfolded?
Absolutely. Well, in a nutshell, the highlights. I
The
was
highlights.
a Girl Guide of Canada. I don't know if you've got like girl guides, you know, in Canada, it's Sprites and Brownies and Girl Scouts, or Boy Scouts or Beavers we have here as well. And it's just a way for children to get oriented with nature and do like survival skills and crafting and hands-on. So when I was a little girl, I was introduced to this concept of, take only pictures and leave only footprints. So it really became obviously like how do we give to the world, and how do we find our place in it. And I was an environmentalist, I think, from a very young age, and that was as I was developing as a healer, and my mother's father's family, my mother's family in general are healers. My grandfather was a surgeon and he married a nurse. My mother's a nurse. My sister's an X-ray tech. Like, healing is in my blood. And it went from being a very traditional medical approach to wellness to realizing that, we're spiritual beings on a human journey. And how do we approach the world as a group? So I started actually studying social psychology. In 2016, I went to university as a mature student, and I learned a lot about like sociology and psychology, but also political science and economics, and realizing like, how does our world work? So social psychology, I didn't even realize was a study until I got to university, and it actually bridges mental health, because as a massage therapist, I wanted to really more help people with their mental, emotional health. And social psychology bridges mental health to politics and environmentalism, and how do we operate as a culture. So I'm really passionate about colonialism. When I learned about the residential school system in Canada in about 2013, I'm realizing this scope of oppression and exploitation that is built into our economic system, and how do we govern ourselves. And our mindset is a really big part of that. So we're largely conditioned as consumers, right? And men's place in the world, the patriarchy, is not men. It's a mindset that has been taught to us through religion, through the military, through power dynamics, and so much of it has been might makes right. That's really a mindset that I feel like we have to unlearn, this dynamic of power over and power under, and our ego, and how our different parts of ourselves operate. I just find that really fascinating. We can get into that, but ultimately, I feel like all of us, even women, perpetuate the patriarchy and how we treat each other and how we raise our children. And I don't have children. I have a rabbit. So, in a nutshell, like, I'm just really fascinated about how people operate within the world, and how can we unlearn harmful behaviors and habits and mindsets, and how can we relearn how to become more collaborative and communicative, and how can we develop healthy boundaries? How can we really come together as a society in a time when, authoritarianism is a real challenge, and a real top-down hierarchical manner. Like, and it's, history shows us that it repeats itself, and either we do something differently, or we're going to become, that we either heal as a planet, or we're going to demolish the planet. Like, I don't see like, I'm very much a shades of gray kind of thinker, but like, black and white only gets us so far. Like, how can we really come together and, and work the rainbow? So I don't know, that's maybe a cheesy way to say that. I mean, there's a value to diversity, and how can we learn to come together?
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. I had some things that I really want to ask.
Yeah,
What came
please.
up to me is really the healing journey. Why was it so important for you to start the healing journey? Because you see a lot of people are hurt, but they don't feel the necessary to heal themselves, or they say, well, there's nothing wrong with me, or they just go through their life and then they reach a state of their life and they feel like, oh, now I need to do something. But then they wasted so many years of their life. So how did it start for you that you felt like, okay, now I need to heal myself from my trauma of the things that I've experienced?
Well, and that's a very layered question, Vincent. Thank you so much for showing your interest. And really, healing, as a healer, it's like we tend to go to a healer for somebody to fix us. And I feel like that's part of the hierarchy that I'm talking about, is like, we go to the doctor, and like, yes, they're experts, and I value their expertise, but at the same time, I believe that everybody needs to take accountability for healing themselves. And that's not something that's really taught to us. That was really a big difference between when I was an RMT as a medicalized body work, to as I've, surrendered my RMT license and I became holistic Eleanor, and I just transformed my business to now I'm not covered by insurance benefits. That it's more as an entrepreneurial journey, that like, people more recognize, my clients recognize that they are responsible for their healing, and it changes. And it's been a long journey. Heal or heal thyself. That's always been, and every master is ever a student. And I really do believe that we have great potential as humans to change, although I also recognize that change is very scary. And that's what we're learning. We're unlearning mindsets that keep us stuck, like scarcity as an example, because even capitalism is based on the scarcity of resources. And it's about learning abundance as a very basic example and mindset to realize that we are, a growth mindset, it's commonly referred to as, and recognizing that our nervous system will adapt to negative things that happen. So for example, like trauma in the body. And when I started really understanding what trauma was and how it's not exactly what happens to us. Like we all have stories, we all have relationships and abuse and neglect that make us who we are, and understanding our nervous systems and the adaptations that come to protect us, like different aspects of our ego and different parts of ourselves that ultimately keep us stuck. But we love to project and make that somebody else's fault as well. And that's what we were talking about in the back room about relationships and how relationships are so challenging. I've heard from ultimately men that like men have been abused. And I feel like that's the dynamic that plays out is like women and how that plays out. Like, so a social psychology thing that I learned was that men tend to physically bully, whereas women tend to socially bully. And not to say that women can't be physically abusive and men can't be socially abusive, but by and large, like girls in the playground, like I remember myself as a girl, not a proud thing to say, but I was more dramatic, like, and I would bully other girls and I would, exclude other girls, and I would like play all of that stupid drama shit that, pardon my language, that girls do. And then, and it's manipulative ultimately. But unfortunately, like I'm really passionate about truth and reconciliation here in Canada, and recognizing that we have a missing and murdered Indigenous women, especially, and the rate of femicide in Canada is apparent. A woman is murdered every 3 days in Canada by a spouse that can't control their own emotions, right? And if a woman ever wants to leave, then unfortunately the outcome tends to be physical assault and ultimately murder. And that is a statistic that I just can't seem to, like, how do we heal? Like, it's great to have a shelter to say that women escaping men can go into a shelter. And that was a part of my experience attempting to go into politics as a Green Party representative in a provincial and a federal election here in Ontario. And I did a fundraiser for Halton Women's Place, a local organization that will take in battered and beaten women. Right. And that's like just how it's in their families. And it's like, well, that's great that, and we have a government that's cutting funding for shelters, but it's like, but how do we prevent the need for that? How do we come together as a society, and how do we shift our violent and manipulative behavior? So that's been really fascinating for me. And you were asking, like, as a healing mindset, is recognizing that, it's not our fault. We like to project blame on our parents, or we like to blame ourselves, but that's just a mindset that, like, recognizing that it's not anybody's fault, but we do have an opportunity to heal those dynamics, and nobody else can do that for us. We can always point fingers and say in a relationship, it's like, well, you're being a bitch, you're being an asshole. Like, we can name call and make it somebody else's fault. But how do we show up and develop emotional intelligence? And how do we develop healthy boundaries? How do we develop communication skills so that we can actually work together? But our egos tend to not let us do that. So I find that that's a fascinating concept in mental health. Like, I'm not a therapist, I'm not a mental health professional regulated by the government, but I am a private professional to help people move forwards with their challenges, because this world is a lot.
Yeah, it is for sure. And what really came to mind was the mindset, because you bring that up a lot. Why is the mindset so important? Because what I saw in my own life, mindset was for me, oh, it's my problem, or it's my fault, or I did everything wrong. But I didn't change it to the positive. I was always in the negative. So how was it for you? Did you were stuck for years and years in a negative mindset, and now you said to yourself, now I need to go to a positive mindset? Was it difficult?
There were layers to it, and I came to insights, one by one on my own. Like, that's what personal development and self-help section of the bookstore is all about. And, like, for example, complaining was one that was a very big aha to me when I was complaining about working on a Sunday at one point. But then put it on Facebook, and then I like immediately just had this big aha that, well, I'm making a choice to work. Why am I complaining about it? And I love what I do. So complaining is something that I've unlearned, because I feel like that's a very much like a power under energy. Like I said, there's power over and there's power under. Complaining and like a victim mindset and why me can be just as harmful and just as manipulative as the power over. Ultimately, recognizing that, yes, mindset, there is something for me to take accountability, because I feel better when I don't complain. For example, like you do get energy from people when you complain and they're like, oh yeah, well, sucks to be you, right? And yet there comes a point where I need to take accountability. It's like, yeah, I can vent, or I can learn how to, share what it is that I'm feeling, because that's valid, but what am I sharing with whom and when and how much, right? Like, and just to be mindful of how we show up. And mindfulness is a whole other, thing to learn. That was awareness, right? Like that's ultimately what is part of the growth mindset. But there's also the emotional intelligence too, because we can always get stuck in our head. And again, just what we're taught, like so many different things, like, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Have you ever heard that saying? It's kind of something that kids
Yeah.
say in the schoolyard. And it's recognizing and unlearning that is just bullshit, that words do hurt. And yes, there's the power over the physical bullying that I was talking about, and hurting people with sticks and stones, but recognizing that our language is very powerful. So when I understood gaslighting as well as a psychological manipulation technique of how it's really much a denial and a manipulation to get other people to think that, that they're crazy, rather than, and when I started recognizing that, I'm like, oh my God, but that's what our leadership in our world does. It's like, it's always somebody else's fault. It's always somebody else's, like, I very rarely see politicians take accountability for what's, happening. It's always somebody else's fault. I'm just tired of that dynamic as well. So I feel like I've developed a boundary, but I've developed a lot of compassion to communicate with people and call them in on their behavior. At least that's the goal. Because judgment is another mindset thing. Like judgment is very much this finger pointing deflection in our mindset that just ultimately, like that's the saying, I'm pointing two fingers at you, I've got six pointing back at me. How am I showing up? Versus making it somebody. Do you know what I mean? Like, so mindset is big, but it's also the emotional intelligence. It's also the communication, to answer your question, Vincent.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. What really there comes so much questions when I'm listening to you. I have so many questions comes up, but I want to go a bit deeper about the trauma, because you said like as a little girl you're like bullying and being like a nasty girl and all of kind of stuff. Just being playful, but also being like in a dark side. Why do you think that you and society is pushed into that trauma and also looking at the trauma? But why are we not healing it? And why do we still continue being in this victim mode and like, oh, it's her fault. She dumped me for another guy. She's just such a bitch and all of that. So why do you think we're not going inward and we're not putting a mirror in front of ourselves like, okay, it was also my fault, but we're so afraid to look at that. Why is that? Why we're so afraid to look at the trauma?
Aha. And I feel like that's more an example of our culture. Because as much as, so what the social psychology education gave to me was a framework of analyzing what level are we talking about. Because there's an individual on a micro level, on an individual level, and how we show up, and that relationship we have with ourself, that relationship that we have with our soul, the relationship that we have with food, and you said like pornography, and these issues that we have with cannabis and alcohol and shopping and work and exercise. Like these are all elements that we have control over. But when we have trauma, we tend to shut down some parts of us, and then we overuse and cope with other resources. So that trauma is not what happens to us. It's the adaptation in our nervous system, the fight, flight, freeze, fawn. Fawning is one that I think a lot of women do, but men do as well. It's like when your nervous
What
system
is that?
shuts down. So, okay, so fight, you're gonna fight. I think of myself, historically as a woman. It's like if you're barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen, preparing a meal, and it's the threat that comes through the door. All right. It's not really unlikely that your nervous system is going to go into fight mode, right? Although that's where, like, sometimes it's like power over and it's a shouting match. It's a bid for power, right? But then there's fleeing. Are you going to run away? It's not really easy to run away, right? You're probably going to get caught, right? Or you're going to freeze. Your nervous system is going to shut down, right? You just kind of, that's when our nervous system just cannot operate and you shut down. I feel like a lot of people do freeze, because I'll come back to the cultural implication of that in a minute. But then there's fawning. So fawning is when it's like, okay, well, the threat's there. It's like, well, can I make the threat a sandwich? can I, and a lot of empaths or people who are highly sensitive, the more sensitive that we are to the threat, and the more, if we can take their energy, to ease them, like we give our energy very easily. People pleasing is an example of fawning. Or it's like, even for women, it's like, okay, well, then I'm going to have sex with them so they don't leave me. Like there's all of these different dynamics of, or they're not going to hurt me if I have sex with them, right? Like there's so many ways that can play out, the trauma, the mechanisms in our body, the adaptations that, the organism of ourselves, like that's just, unless we learn how to heal that trauma, which is, vagus nerve strengthening. It's massage, it's body work, it's stretching, it's movement, it's breath work. Breath work is huge. Plant medicine has been very helpful for me to reset my nervous system and to learn to be present. So mindset is part of that. So that's on the micro level, there's us as an organism. But then there's also the meso level of analysis, that we're in relationship together. So we're on a community. We're interacting with other individuals. And communication skills, or the lack thereof, plays out in our culture. And that's where, like, there's so much disconnection, because people are disconnected from themselves. So we're obviously going to be disconnected as a community, as a society, because the culture that's overriding is a big influence of the macro level of analysis, that these are the institutional structures that I find so fascinating. So this is religion, this is military, this is government, this is media, this is our family, this is our religion. These are all of these elements of how we operate as a social system, how that makes the culture of the meso and affects the trauma of the individual. So, I mean, we can take the example of homelessness, right? And I understand that's, that like suicide rates in men are on the rise, right? Like and homelessness is a real issue, and it's growing internationally. And like the fear that we have, like on a socioeconomic level, like money pressures are really big on a lot of people, in terms of, can we afford to survive, right? Like I find that really fascinating, because on an institutional level, statistically speaking, it is more affordable for the government to give somebody a home, a tiny home even, or like a bigger home. It's cheaper for them to do that than it is to actually support them when they're homeless, with shelter costs, with policing costs, with healthcare costs, because it's really hard on your health, to be homeless, or prison costs. Like these are all, like, it costs way more money on unemployment and all of these different social systems than it is to actually give somebody a home. And I mean, it's easy to point a finger and say, well, that's communism, but people don't really understand the implications of, like, the value system that these institutional systems have given us. And it's like this, how do we learn to come together? And we need to have a conversation. We need to be able to calm our nervous system enough to discuss solutions, rather than when we get into blame and saying, well, that's like, as soon as somebody gets defensive, like that energy in our nervous system, it shuts down conversation. And so I really feel like it's not just men, it's not just women, because we all are carrying trauma in our bodies, and it all plays out in our communication skills, and how we tend to create more drama, because we create, like, our nervous systems will create drama if we haven't learned to process our trauma.
But it's also if you're an empath and highly sensitive, it's double, because I've seen it with myself. I'm highly sensitive and also an empath. And in the beginning, I didn't knew about it. I was really clueless. Sometimes I felt the entire world on my shoulders, and I didn't know why. Or I was talking with somebody, and then I feel really angry, and I was like, why do I feel so angry? And I didn't understand why. And my nervous system, like you explained, was always just triggered. I always wanted to run away. If there was a situation that was intense,
Mhm.
I wanted to run. I didn't
Mhm.
stand my ground. I didn't face it. I didn't talk about it because of my communication skills. It was really bad. I didn't learn. I never learned how to communicate properly and also how to solve issues or communicate with people on how to solve a problem because they gave so much intensity to me and I just like, oh, now what? And I always wanted to run. So I just wanted to hop on there because I think that's really important for people to understand the nervous system and how to calm it down. Because you mentioned the breathing, you can do
Yes.
energy work, you can.
Yes.
What else? What else can you do?
Oh my goodness. Huge. That's not one that I have a lot of education in, but I understand the importance of breath work and I practice it personally. I do want to move into that. But
Cold
like body work,
exposure.
yeah, and cold and heat, like that's
Yeah.
evolutionarily been very helpful because my understanding in our nervous system, like there's contraction, like there's the fear response, right? It's like there's a little literal constriction of energy, like you can see it like in fists, for example, right? Or you're trying to like stay close and to fight yourself, but it's that same pattern plays out like in tight muscles, right? And your nervous system, like your blood vessels, everything contracts and condenses. Like there's that'll stick in our, like I heard on a podcast the example of like, say a kid is in class and they put their hand up and they have the wrong answer and everybody laughs at them, right? That kid has this scrunching, like your nervous system, you get triggered, right? Like there's this episode. And until we learn how to process that event that happens, like it can become very formative and then our nervous system contracts. So that's whereas love and healing and abundance, it's very much an opening energy. Like gratitude has been a huge part of my practice. So breath work, but even just cultivating gratitude in my heart space and compassion for myself and recognizing, like I came up a mindset block about love. And I thought if I loved more, then I would hurt more. So my mindset was limiting my heart from more of an unconditional way of being and loving everybody equally, but but also seeing how I articulate those boundaries. And am I, so breath work, and I said plant medicine, I said like yoga has been very helpful on my journey. The tapping, a lot of people find, talk therapy can be very helpful. Cognitive behavioral therapy has statistical benefit, but like men's groups, like we need more men's groups of men to just talk to each other, because a lot of the times when we don't have a social network and our partner becomes our support network, I mean, that's not really a partner's job.
No.
So it's like, yeah, I can hear your challenges, but at some point you need to process your trauma in your own way, in your own circle, with your therapist, with your buddies. Find a men's group so that you're more centered and present when you come home with your partner. And that's really challenging. Like, and that's back to the institutional structure. Now that we have these nuclear families, like it takes a village to raise a child. It's very stressful to raise children when you live in a silo. Our community is disconnected. So it's really about building community in a way that is, conducive to health. And that's easier said than done. So there's so many different solutions on so many different levels. And I've seen so many solutions out there, Vincent, that we have no lack of solutions in the world. It's merely like, as you're saying, like it is scary to change. And it's difficult. And then because we have this fear of doing things differently, and what if they laugh at me, right? Like, so it's like it stays like being mocked. Like that's a huge dynamic in our political culture, right? Like in name calling, and like our nervous system will either deny that it happens, or our nervous system is like it's already, it plays out like it's playing out, and like we can't tell the difference. Like a study was fantastic on the positive side as well as the negative side. But like an athlete who's running a marathon, for example, if they do a visualization exercise, the same parts of their brain are lighting up than as if they're actually running and doing their marathon. So to think about, it's like, but if I have been assaulted, it's like my body still thinks that I'm being assaulted, whether I'm actually is in the past versus, so we'll behave as if that's already happening. So our behavior is very reluctant to change if we still think that is going to become the outcome, because we learn and we adapt, right? So,
It's
and
survival.
it's a survival technique, absolutely, and that's what makes it like a defensive reaction. Like it's our nervous system trying to protect us. So there's, again, back to no fault. There's no fault that's how your nervous system and how your trauma is playing out in your system. But until we learn how to finish that loop and recognize that constriction, so that was something else that's very important about the personal development industry, is very much the toxic positivity and the spiritual bypassing that can come out of it. So like you said, like negative, right? You have really negative thoughts. How do you change that mindset? Is like, we'll just smile. That'll just think happy thoughts. That'll do it. And positive psychology is huge. Like it really does help when you can apply it. But unless you have the somatic element of healing and also acknowledging that the trauma is there in your nervous system, like, yeah, you can smile, but at the same time, that's just masking, unless you can actually heal and have your soul be witnessed and air that dirty laundry, like bring out those skeletons out of the closet. It's like, what happened, that your story, and how does it make you who you are? Because abuse and neglect are rampant in this world. But until we learn to love ourselves and to love each other in community, little bit by little bit, to really just be seen. And that's what we're doing at the Love Your Vibe Transformation. We're creating a new culture where everybody is safer, seen, celebrated, and supported. Because when we can really be present with people and be judgmental, when I can talk about this element of my shame, like when I can talk about the fact now that I was a bully, and I could admit that was a dynamic, take accountability for how I showed up and I hurt people's feelings. Like, I think it was unconscious at the time. I was a kid, but at some level, it's like you take accountability. Are you consciously doing this, or are you unconsciously doing this? Because we have to acknowledge how we show up. Because somebody else's trauma, like that drama, like we have to have a healthy boundary. Like, just because you've been abused doesn't mean I'm going to allow you to abuse me anymore. It's challenging. We have to have the courage. It takes courage to heal. It takes curiosity to heal. It's like wondering, well, what about that skeleton in the closet? Why do I act that way? Because without the curiosity, and I feel like that's kind of the challenge of a cult, right? Because like in the world, it's like if we're disconnected, then we kind of fall for anything sometimes. And we just go with what's familiar and what's comfortable, but it's not really safe. And it takes curiosity to challenge. And back to like, well, why don't we change? It's like the lemmings effect. So historically, if you spoke up to challenge authority, if you challenge the military, if you challenge the church, then your head's going to be cut off. So it's back to a survival mechanism to even speak our truth and to challenge the narrative. It can feel like it's like when your worldview is challenging, when your worldview is challenged, it can provoke that same defense reaction. And it takes a lot of courage and curiosity to reconnect and to heal. That felt like a long answer, but I was tying together a couple of the elements.
Yeah, for sure. It's really interesting that the things that you explain, but what I want to add is also choice, because I saw it with myself.
Yeah.
I had the choice to change, but I choose to stay negative. I choose to be lonely. I choose to be miserable. I choose to be working at a job that I don't like, for example. It's a choice that we make. And I see a lot of people, they know that they want to change, but still they choose the safe way out.
Yes.
Still keep complaining. Oh, my life sucks. Oh, this, complaining about this. My boss this, my wife this, my partner this.
Yep.
But we don't change.
Yep. Yeah. That's it. You have to choose to change.
Yeah, exactly. It's a choice. And then when I made the change I chose now to live in a positive way, I feel better. I feel more relaxed. I now setting boundaries. We also talk about that later, the boundaries. But it changed a lot from the negative to the positive, because I've learned with the Hawkins, with the vibrations, how you level up. It changes everything. You manifest more into your life. And when you're just negative and complaining and bitching about everything, you're staying in a low vibration, and then you will attract the wrong things, or you will attract people that will make your life a living hell, or what else you will attract. But I've learned really in the past, if you feel better. But what I want to come to make the circle complete is the traumas. I
Yes.
really had to heal myself, because I saw with myself when I wanted to talk with women, I was always in the flight mode. I always wanted to run, or I was in the freeze mode, flight or freeze. I never wanted to fight, but really in the
Yeah.
flight and freeze. That's always wanted to be.
Hmm.
But
Okay.
I've learned it was really the trauma and the things that I need to heal in my past life, and also with relationships that we also talked about how difficult they can be. Maybe we can touch about it later as well, because that's really also important to talk about that as well. But I learned really that I had to heal myself. And once I started to heal, setting boundaries and take responsibility of my own life and not give it away or not let a government help me. So they will never help us. But I stopped giving them the power. I took my own power. I stand my own ground. I grounded myself more. So that was really, I need to do it on my own. But what I really like what you said was, we need to do it together. I was
Hmm.
always a lone wolf. I always wanted to fix everything by myself, do everything by myself. But doing this podcast and everything in my life, I have to have great, amazing people around me. Then I can grow, because they can lift you up. If you have people that are negative, they're gonna push you down, right?
Yes. Yeah, that's a great way to bring it full circle, Vincent. Absolutely. It's it takes choice to change and to be courageous, to be curious, bring all the C words together. Because it's
But we don't want to
I
be
mean, and
uncomfortable.
I believe that the government's job is to protect people. Like, it's just how our society has evolved, and there's pros and cons with how our government works.
I
You know,
feel like we
so,
don't need them. We
well,
can
we
we
do and
can do it
we don't.
ourselves.
We do and we don't, and that's and I mean, that's a really interesting discussion, because I believe that in a lot of this personal development and all of this transformation in ourselves and transformation in our communities and transformation in our institutional structures is there's a paradox in it, because it's hard to say it's all one or the other. And that's what I meant by, is it black or is it white? Because there's gray area there, because there are pros and cons to capitalism, as an example. Like, there are pros and cons to a democracy. There's pros and cons, like, kind of, but it's like, hey, but I'm pretty sure there's more pros to democracy than there are pros to authoritarianism, statistically throughout history. Because I think the governments and the rules of law, do give us a degree of freedoms that we know. Like, I'm proud in Canada that we have a constitution and a Bill of Rights, and, well, a charter, a constitution, right? That we do have some rights and freedoms, but that, to your point, it's like, well, we don't want to need the government, but at some point, just in how capitalism functions, like, in one of my social work classes, the professor said at one point that, if capitalism worked as well as they said that it would, we wouldn't actually need charity, because there are people who fall through the cracks, and there are people that need support. And it's easy to say that we don't need the government, we shouldn't need the government, but at that point, but that's how we've evolved as a society. So I do believe that we need to recreate community. Like, and again, there are all sorts of solutions of how we can be more micro communities rather than this, consolidation of power structure. But I respect the system for how it is, and yet we still have to take personal accountability. It's not either or; it's both.
Yeah, I have a different point of view, and that's also good, because if you're just follow your direction or my direction, it doesn't work out. You need to do what feels right for you. For me,
Mhm.
what I feel like I agree with you. We have to build our own communities. But for food, for example, we don't need the big pharma industry or the big industry that does the food.
Yes.
I can create my own food. I can trade with other people to make food, or we
Yes.
can create food together. So I don't need a government for that. I can have my own financial resources with other people. I don't need a government for that. So that's my point of view. Like, I don't
Yep.
need a government at all. But I also understand your point of view. Like, we also have laws, because if there's no laws, there's chaos. But how laws are on to us, that's a different kind of stories and different kind of talk. But yeah, it's good for me or for us to take our own power back, and I feel like that's what we need to do. Like, heal
Mhm.
ourselves, learning more about ourselves, because we're clueless usually. Like, what do I want? What direction do I want to go? What is my heart telling me?
Yes.
So I feel like really listening to yourself is really important, and people are usually listening to other people and not to themselves. So
Yes.
before we're gonna go to the commercial, how was it for you that you really want to go into your power? How important was it for you? Because I think for women, it's really important also not really to be stuck in the masculine, but really feel like power, also powerful, like a powerful woman, but also work with your partner and not feel like, oh, I need to be this high class women or this women that has it all, but really to be working together. How do you see that?
That sounded like a lot of different questions there. But what is power? And how do we define power? Because at this point, you may or may not be aware, but the president of the United States is starting a tariff war, and it's meant to influence the markets. And how do we shop? How do we consume? Because they said, like, what do we have all? Do we have all of the things? So that's what's referred to as soft power, when it's money and it's control and power over resources, right? So that's one element of power. And then there's hard power. So that's the might makes right. That's, we've got the biggest military in the world, and that's power, right? It's if I can make somebody afraid of me, then that's a form of power. But then there's also spiritual power, and what's really aligned, and what is our soul here to do? Because I mean, regardless of what your religion is, most of them believe in some concept of a soul, and that we're here on planet Earth for a reason. I believe we're not human beings having a spiritual journey. I believe that we are spiritual beings having a human journey. And what is humanity? And I believe that is really power, in terms of, can I recognize my own humanity? Can I recognize the humanity in my partner? And what does that mean? I believe that means that there's power in respect. There is power in trusting other people. There is power in love. There is power in gratitude and building networks of people that believe in each other. Again, how do we collaborate? How do we communicate? How do we, and in a relationships, like, and that's what I meant by, I think I was saying in the backstage there, is that's what I'm unlearning right now, is codependency as a relationship addiction, and expecting, because I feel like that's, back to mindset, back to what are we taught? I was taught, and I believe it's a common cultural theme, is that, well, you have to find somebody who's your other half, like this romanticism idea. And so we look to other people to fill us up in some ways. And yes, there's something to interdependency, that, we need each other. That historically, anthropologist Margaret Mead, doing research into the history of humanity, to say that what was a defining moment of understanding what society was finding an adult skeleton with a broken femur, and it fused, and it healed. And it meant that person who broke their femur, their upper leg bone, because without that, we can't walk. And without walking, we can't find food and water. So it means that society has their back to help them survive. That's a defining, that as humanity, we've evolved to need each other in a social structure. We're not independent, lonely creatures, right? We need each other. There's a symbiosis in how we operate and how we want love and companionship. But yet it's also about recognizing, my own power and how I show up in that relationship, because I'm tired of being a bully. I was tired of being a victim. And what I'm unlearning is to be a savior. That's another element of the ego, to show up, and because I feel better about myself if I can make sure that your life is okay. And I feel like that's a lot of energy of charity, of like giving people a handout, right? It makes me feel better about myself. It makes me look good if I'm helping someone else, versus showing up and having morals and having ethics. I think there's power in morals and ethics, and showing up in a way that demonstrates that I care for other people, that it's a kindness. I think there's power in that, versus being nice, because I feel like there's a difference. I was explaining this to my boyfriend the day, like the difference between kindness and niceness, because kindness is a genuine generosity of wanting to connect, and there's power in kindness and community. Whereas if you're just nice, like people who are people pleasers, like you said, when your nervous system, you just go into freeze mode. It's like, well, just don't hurt me, right? It's niceness can be manipulative. Niceness is a coping mechanism for a lot of people. It's versus genuinely learning how to love myself and recognize and learn to trust myself, and to learning to respect myself and learning to love myself. That is real power. That's a spiritual soul energy that nobody else can do for us. But it doesn't mean you're going to walk all over me because I'm kind. I feel like that's the other cultural mindset we have to unlearn, is that kindness is weakness, that emotions are weakness. No, emotions are showing us where there's boundaries. Emotions are showing us where there's a need, and it's not weak to have needs. Like, we deserve respect. Like, that's humanity. People deserve respect. And in our province at this point, we have a premier who was elected with like a fraction of the vote, because most people don't show up to vote, that he's looking to privatize prisons, which is going on in the States. But prisons have been, again, back to, like, I believe there is a benefit to government and the structures that we have. I don't take them for granted, but he's lining up to put homeless people into prison. Like, is that ethically right? Is that morally right? Is it giving them a place to live? It's certainly, why are we criminalizing homelessness? Like, but that's a form of power when you have a police force to implement laws, right? Like, that's hard power. Back to, like, what is power? It depends on how you define it and in which relationship you mean.
Yeah, it's quite interesting, the things that we discuss, especially about power, about relationship, and really what I want to touch on is the unlearning. I think that's the most important, that we have to do unlearning what has been taught, what the structure of the system is telling us what we need to do and how we need to operate, and really go into the heart, really step into that and tell yourself, what do I want? What's important for me? And if you once you do that, like Eleanor explained, all these steps and all these coping mechanisms, everything that we're going through, it's how we've been taught, but also the trauma. So if you really go backwards and really put the mirror in front of yourself, you feel like life will becomes a lot easier and really better, and better for, in a way, how can I explain, better for you to make decisions, and not really the trauma or the things that you've been going through, that they make the choices for you. And I feel like that's really important, to really unlearn the shit that has been taught to you, and really learn better ways to take care of yourself and your family, your friends, and your beloved. And I always say, you are the first person that you have the best relationship with. You can, if you don't have the best relationship with yourself, you cannot help other people. You cannot help your family. So always put yourself on number one. And sometimes you need to be choosing yourself, but it's important. It's really important, right? To go there for a little bit.
How to heart.
How to heart. Yeah, it's been really cool. I really enjoyed our talk. I like the dynamics and how everything goes, and I've learning so much from you. So thank you so much, Eleanor, for what you explained so far. We're gonna go into a commercial, and then I really want to touch a little bit more about relationship, because I feel like men, they're really struggling with relationship with women. For me too, I've been in a toxic relationship, and I want to go a little more deeper into that.
Please.
After yeah, so I'm gonna do the commercial. It's about gold and silver and how it can benefit you. So here it goes. Be right back.
Increasing expenses have caused us all a lot of pressure these days, and it's affecting even the wealthiest of people. Most have lost their sense of security, stability, and even hope for a strong financial future. The game plan of everyone in your cell phone has likely been disrupted or even hardcore stopped, and most are looking for a creative solution to regain financial momentum. Oftentimes, life's best solutions are the simplest. But first, a question. What is something most people think they should own but don't? Crypto, fine art, real estate? Nope. We are talking about real money, the kind kings and queens fought for and large institutions today buy in mass. We're talking about gold and silver, assets that provide confidence in tough financial situations. So the question is, do you own any? If you don't, you're not alone. Most people aren't maximizing the power of precious metals because it's just been too complicated. And even though they see advertisements about gold and silver daily, they don't really know who to trust. That is, until now. The bottom line is that buying gold and silver doesn't have to be complicated or scary. There's a simple, better way to accumulate assets and create financial peace, headache-free. And this very minute, a new community of average people are seeing above average results to the tune of tens of millions in assets over the last few years. This system is tested, it's simple, and it's not an experiment. To date, it's helped more than 80,000 people bring hope back into their lives. It's invitation only, and right now, this new community has accepted a challenge to give away as much free gold this year as possible. Curious? Learn how to get your free gold today. Check out the next step to get the details.
Welcome back. Welcome. So, Eleanor, I want to jump a little bit more about the relationship and also to start unlearning. I think that's really important because of habits. But let's start with that, and then we're gonna go into the habit and unlearning. And then I want to deep a little bit more about what you do as coaching, because you do something really powerful, help people living from the heart, and that's so powerful. So I also want to go there a little bit as well. But before we go there, let's talk about relationships.
Ooh, thank you, Vincent. And How to Heart, like what a great name for a podcast, and
Yeah, it's
recognizing. And I
really
love
cool.
the symbol of the lion and that courage. That's what we're talking about. That's a symbol of courage, quite commonly, the lion. And How to Heart, like it's been boiled down by a mentor of mine, Tammy Cunningham, and she said very simply, are you seeking love or are you being love? And I feel like when we're in a traumatized place, we're seeking love. We're seeking to be seen. We're seeking to be heard. We're seeking to connect in relationship. And yet the common difference of again, as I was trying to get at with fear and the stress response, the trauma defense mechanism, it's a contraction, is what I was saying. And that's when you're seeking love. Like you're really wanting to be held, your nervous system. You're really wanting to be validated, really wanting to be comforted. And that's valid. Okay, like there's value in acknowledging when we hold on to the trauma in that way, because our nervous system is in a holding pattern. Literally, it's that's the adaptation. Versus, are you being love? Are you able to connect and unwind your nervous system? So that's making space, and that's where I was coming in. So breathing physiologically makes space in the body. And I'm learning how to be love. I'm using my lungs, I'm using my heart to actually create a loving vibration on a very basic level. Versus, am I seeking love? It's like I'm taking up, I'm just taking, holding my breath. I'm contracted, and it takes choice. Like you said, it takes choice to change, and it takes courage and curiosity to be like, well, why is this in my body? How can I make space? How can I learn how to be love so that I can show up in a relationship versus somebody who is more in a victim mindset, which because and victimization is not our fault. It's not our fault that we were victimized. Again, our cultural institutions, it's a very exploitative system in terms of economics and the consolidation of wealth. And how do we expand? How do we believe in ourselves? What is our purpose? Why are we here? It's like working a job you don't like you said, right? Like this is a choice that you make, and there are pros and cons, and there are benefits, and there are risks. It's like, okay, I'm going to choose to go to work today because I know I'm going to get a paycheck. But it's like, but if I'm learning how to be love, then I'm going to learn to expand and recognize that that's not an alignment for me. And how can I find something that's meaningful? And if you find meaning, like if you find meaning in your work, that's great. But it's like transforming into a business. And that's why you're starting your podcast. Like you feel you have a need, an aligned, authentic need to share your voice and to amplify the voices of others. Because we know that this is a form of community. This is a form of collaboration that you're offering to your community. And that's you being love, right? You're making space for somebody else versus seeking love, right? You're not doing this, to validate, to be validated. You're doing this to validate somebody else, right? It's like you're making space in the community and you're learning. You've unlearned selfishness, but we also have to unlearn that self-care is selfishness. We have to unlearn that self-care, because I'm firmly of the attitude and the habit that self-care is service. Because the more that I can heal my trauma, the more that I can heal my nervous system, and the more purpose I can embody and the more love I can embody, then I can show up and influence somebody else's day. And I can be a healer and take pride in that. There you go. There's that lion word again. I feel like I answered your question there.
Yeah, I really want to touch on the healing and also the love for myself, because self-love was so difficult to find within
Mm,
me because I was always looking outside of myself.
yeah.
If I sleep with this girl, then I feel good. If I sleep with this girl, then I feel loved. I was always looking outside of myself just to get the quick fix. And I was also in the pickup industry and also was always looking for the girl to get a night with. So I feel good. I feel the ego was, how can I explain? The ego was really like, I felt good. Like the ego
Mm, for
was
sure.
stroked. It's like, oh yeah, I feel I'm the man now.
Yep.
But deep down inside, I felt awful. I didn't feel myself. I wasn't really me. But I hold on to that because I felt I was in control. I had the power. I like you explained in the previous way, that I had a way of manipulating women into bed, or I had a way of saying things to women so I can maneuver myself and also keep myself safe in a way. But I had to control. That's what I believed. But I wasn't feeling myself. I was really disconnected from myself. And
Mm,
that's what we really do, right? We were always looking for outside of ourselves, but not looking for ways to really love ourselves from within. From within.
thank you for your vulnerable courage and sharing that, Vincent. So how did you learn to love yourself? How did you shift that?
Well, with the business, I really learned with the business and also boundaries. That's how I learned to love myself. Really, what's important for me, because I remember was when I was in the store, sometimes people cut me off and I didn't say anything. I just let it be because I didn't want to have any conflict. I didn't feel important. But now I feel like I am important because I
Yay.
am a human being. I also have rights. If I'm there
Yay.
and people cross me, it's like, wait, just go back into the line. But it takes courage because I'm afraid that I'm gonna have a conflict with people, so I don't say anything. But then we go back. I never learned how to take care of myself because also I've been bullied, so I didn't have any self-esteem. So it was easy and better for me just not to do it. But I've learned taking responsibility of my life, learning how system works, how learning how people work, how they behave, how they think, how they act. So I cannot really be angry at them, but really have compassion because they need to heal themselves, or they're going through a phase in their life that they need to discover. But really, if you the question that you asked me is really how to love myself, start your own
Mhm.
business and really look for ways to help other people, because then you feel good. You feel like taking care of yourself, but also you give value to other people and you learn how to set boundaries, because sometimes people approach me, it's like, oh yeah, I want to do this with you. It's like, wait, first I need to think about, yeah, but first let us work together. It's like, no, I need to just wait. And I learned to really be in my power. So a business, starting a business and really setting boundaries and taking charge of your life, that really helped me.
Woohoo! Good for you. Yeah, it takes courage to start a business. Fantastic.
Yeah,
Way to go,
it
Vince.
wasn't easy. How was it for you to really operate like that?
And for me, it was just a set of circumstances because I
Hmm.
was raised by a nurse and an accountant for Revenue Canada. So I always thought like it's an employee mindset. I think it was Robert Kiyosaki who identified that there's an employee mindset, and then there's like a small business mindset, a large business mindset, and then like an investor mindset. And it's like, okay, I'm happy with being a sole proprietor. And as a massage therapist, it's just the way that massage therapists operate within the structure of the society, that we tend to be self-employed people. And so when I left college, I thought I'd be an employee, but the very first job that I got, I was a sole proprietor, and I had a contract as within it's called the Oakville Shiatsu and Massage Therapy Center, and it was, so I was independent, but I was working for a clinic with a clinic. And so for me, that started a journey of being an entrepreneur. And what does that mean? Because the clinic was, self-sufficient in terms of like they had their branding, they were well established. They didn't really have to market very much. It was more like I walked into a more or less full clientele, and I built clientele over time. But it wasn't until really that I was introduced to the world of network marketing and buying a small business. I feel like that's how a lot of people come to business, and taking another structure. Legal Shield was the first company that I started with, and I still have a business with today. And they introduced me to the concept of personal development. And they introduced me to the need for sales, because sales is huge personal development and loving yourself. And how can you really be of service? Because there's a lot of masculine service and then there's feminine service. And I mean that in terms of, I find like masculine marketing is very much a power over, get it now, it's going to be gone, or, you're not good enough unless you have it, or, like it's a very manipulative sales tactic. And not to say that, and learning that not everybody wants to buy, but not everybody wants to be sold, right? So like learning little things about how I show up in sales and how I show up in business, and ultimately developing my own branding and developing my own marketing. And it was a whole learning process. But I was very fortunate to come to just in my life path. But for people who have had an employee mindset all of their life, it can be challenging to start a business, to learn, because it's a lot of different skills, between branding and marketing, having space to operate, whether it's bricks and mortar, or whether you're having an online business. Like, how do you meet the needs? I like the ikigai concept of the Venn diagram. That's a Japanese concept of the ikigai is like your sweet spot in this world. Like, what you can find the sweet spot between what you love to do, what you're good at doing, what the world needs, and how you can get paid. And for some people, they're lucky, they live in one of those four circles, but we can really find where there's overlap, because most people just living a job day to day, it's what you get paid at. You're lucky if you like it. You're even more lucky if you enjoy doing it. But if it's really your sole purpose, then, you don't really have to start a business. I mean, you can always become a consultant, right? Or you can launch out as a tradesperson. Like, there are certain industries that lend starting businesses better than others, because then we're back to the socioeconomic structure of, can you be independent, or do you have to operate within some sort of structure? Like, as a massage therapist, I was operating within the constraints of being at the College of Massage Therapists of Ontario, that had, standards and practices and laws that I had to follow, right? So it's finding the niche that works well for you. And finding a disruptive service, right? Like, and I like the idea of network marketing companies. Like, there's pros and cons to that sort of a business structure. It really depends on if you have passion for what it is. Like, am I going to buy a business where I sell people socks and underwear? It's like, well, that's not my thing, but for somebody else, that might really light them up, So I feel like people, there's always a niche that you can find that's the best thing for you. So I hope that answers your question. I hope that gives some food for thought for people who are in a job and want to start a business, because I hear what you're saying, and that's a great way for personal development. But there's also like just listening to podcasts. I feel like that's a great resource that's free, learning information. Yeah.
Yeah. And also, you can create some money on the side. You don't have to be only waiting for your paycheck. You can also make some money on the side. You can have an extra income. And from there, if you really enjoy it, or you're going to shift to something different, then you can do that. What I felt like, you need to do something in your life that you enjoy, and not what you hate. And a lot of people are in a job because they hate it, but it pays the bills. What do you choose? You're going to spend 30, 40 years of your life feeling miserable because of a paycheck? Or you're going to look for something by business or by helping people that really aligned with you, with your heart, and do that. I feel like that's what you mentioned. Also, you're here for a reason. It's not just a 9 to 5. It's looking what you want to do and accomplish in your life, but also how to be of service of other people. So yeah, thank you again so much for the amazing value and everything that you gave us so far. I'm really grateful that you are here and what you shared so far. So I'm really, really grateful for that. So Eleanor, thank you so much. I also want to go a little bit deeper about your coaching and what you do. It's really fascinating, like I said, how you help people really go back into the heart. So can you explain more about your business and the coaching and how you help people?
Thank you, Vince. That's an awesome opportunity. Thank you. As I said, I have two different ways of doing it. So in person, and I work in the city of Burlington in Halton region in Ontario. So we're the Greater Toronto Hamilton area that I work privately. Hands-on is generally my approach. So I give a massage, but it's a massage for body, mind, and soul. That people will show up with, like, commonly a physical ailment, but more and more my practice is developing that people are attracted to. It's like, okay, well, they've got some sort of some relational stress, or I have a woman lately whose parents passed away and she had been a caregiver, and she was experiencing a lot of distress with that. Or people who are feeling challenged and maybe they're stuck in their job and they want to create a business. It's like, okay, well, how can I meet them where they're at? So we do it with body work, massage, but also Reiki. Like, I can help people identify, like, one of my intuitive gifts is empathy. I'm a highly sensitive person. I can feel when emotions are stuck in someone's body, that's part of that constriction. So if there was an incident of bullying, for example, it's like there's some part of their body that's still stuck in the shame that was elicited with bullying, the fear, for example. And when that gets stuck in the body, then there's often grief that gets stuck in the body. So I help people get in touch with those emotions that have been trapped, that create a blockage in the energy system. And with massage and Reiki, and helping them, like, become more aware of that, and where does it come from, and having a conversation with them, introducing breathing techniques to them, grounding techniques, even just being present with their body and how those emotions get stuck in their body. Like, it can be, a sinking feeling in your gut. It can be a heaviness in your chest. It can be a heaviness in your head. It can be a clenching of the jaw. It's tension in the neck and shoulders, right? So it's a physical massage, but I'm helping people understand that, like, I can massage people passively and create space in the nervous system in their body and give them symptomatic relief. But when people are ready to go deeper in person, then I offer what's referred to as a tapping massage. So that's when I hold space for those thoughts and those feelings, and I apply acupressure and help you acknowledge those deeper, darker emotions that are there. Like, I don't consider myself a coach. I don't consider myself a therapist. It's more of a mentorship energy that I come in and hold space for people and say, hey, like, this is grief that you're holding on to. Let's breathe into the sadness. Let's breathe into that anger. Let's breathe into that part of you that doesn't want to look at it, the denial, right? Because that is a valid coping mechanism. Let's acknowledge how your nervous system is holding on, but then say, but I am learning to love and accept myself anyways. So even though there's this contraction, we're reprogramming the nervous system to create space, to feel safe. Safety is really what transformation and healing is all about. Is learning that the threat isn't on your doorstep. It's like, okay, but part of me thinks the threat's on my doorstep, but it's really learning that I can breathe. It's safe to make space. It's safe to love. And I mean, granted, we live in a very privileged area of the world, right? That's always there in the back of my mind, because we have a neighboring Indigenous region that doesn't have clean drinking water in Southern Ontario as well. So, because when your needs aren't physically met, it is really difficult to heal mentally and emotionally. If you live in a really toxic environment, it can be very difficult to heal when the threat is on your doorstep, right? Like, it's all relative. It's meeting people where they're at. Like, there's certain circumstances that people are in, and recognizing that we all have needs that need to be met, and to do our best with what we've got. Like, that's really what resilience becomes. And finding solutions. So that's one part of my business. And then I'm really passionate about the Love Your Vibe transformation that I'm co-creating with Elvira. She's a coach. She's a life coach healer. And she's a real dynamo in her energy. She's just a firecracker. I know she's how I met you. She's out there talking to people all the time, and really love her energy. And her vision was to create this personal development company. And it was the right opportunity at the right time for me to apply all of the skills that I had learned in my private business. But because it can be very challenging, as I mentioned, to be an entrepreneur. Like, it's the branding, it's the marketing, it's the space that you have to maintain, but it's also the bookkeeping, right? And it can be very challenging to be an entrepreneur. But what I love about the Love Your Vibe transformation that we're building is that it's a community. We're all entrepreneurs, but we're all together under the same umbrella. And I help serve people with the Miracle Mindset Mentorship 6-month group mentorship program that we meet over Zoom. So it's open to people internationally. And that's where we create space with the teachings and tools that changed Elvira's life. And as I mentioned, as an entrepreneur, I learned a lot of mindset tools, and a lot of them are spiritual concepts. Like, for example, that life happens for me, not to me. Like, that's a very big concept that I had come across years ago. And it's a nuanced phrase in terms of how we apply it, because it can be very victim blaming when things happen to you, for example. But how can we learn to be a miracle magnet? How can we unlearn? Like we said, that was the question. How do we unlearn and relearn that I am a miracle? And when I'm living in my VAP, my vibration of authentic power, that I can attract miracles to me, that things happen in the world. Like, yes, the world can be very power over, but when I'm learning how that I'm a power over, power under in my own individual self, learning to become power with, that's the culture that we're creating. So we do group mentorship. So people will talk about their experience, journaling, for example, learning attitude of gratitude, learning affirmations, learning emotional intelligence, learning the 4 circles of personal power is her complementary but very powerful boundary exercise. How do we examine the life events of things that happen to us throughout our journey here on planet Earth? And how do we, learn the key of accountability? How can we learn to embody an extreme self-care practice? How do we learn creativity? How do we learn a sense of spirituality? That's the Love Your Vibe transformation. And then as people can go through the 6-month program, that we are building a structure where then people can then go through the 6-month program again, but they're coming in as an apprentice. So they can learn to become a miracle mindset mentor with their own unique story, message, and magic. So I'm training a group of apprentices right now to then take the curriculum that we created during the pandemic. Jennifer Hawkins and I, we are the pair that created the 6-month program under Elvira's VIP Mindset Reset online course, that we take these teachings and tools, and then we're creating a duplicatable system so that the apprentices can come in and have their own business within the Love Your Vibe transformation, because everybody's story is necessary. Everybody's story has value, and to really empower other people and to collaborate with a system that's never really been tried before. So we're doing something new, and the challenge of that was really appealing to me, because as I didn't finish my degree. I started, as I mentioned, the social psychology degree, but when the pandemic happened, just circumstances were that I didn't continue with my degree, and I thought I'd circle back and finish and get that piece of paper. But it's not really necessary, because I got what I needed out of university to apply myself and to do what I wanted to do, which was, as a massage therapist, I really wanted to help people with their mental and emotional health, and that's what I'm doing. So part of my message is developing is that we don't necessarily need the formal training, that we have the PhD in our own transformation, that there is value to self-study, that there is value to learning the hard way, right? Some of the geniuses in the world, don't end up getting a degree. They're just an entrepreneur, and they can just do it, right? It's about the confidence and about the knowledge that we build, and the relationships that we can develop is really influential. So thank you for asking. That's a little bit about both of those businesses, but to really help people progress, hands on, but also hands off. It's a really, I'm really blessed to have 2 different businesses that I'm proud to be growing.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. What I really want to add is, we haven't talked much, but you were always supporting me, and that's how I felt so connected to you, and also that I want to have you on the show, because if I was sharing something, you always were there. You're always like, "Hey, good job," or "That's so important." So for people to rise you up, and I feel like if there are men or women that are listening to this, to really reach out to Eleanor, because she is really, really amazing and powerful what she does, and she's really giving, and she really wants to help you achieve the goals and dreams and the life that you want to create. So yeah, I highly recommend to check out Eleanor's work and see how you can collaborate with her. So yeah, thank you so much, Eleanor, for explaining. The thing that I want to ask is, I usually ask my guest this: what was the most difficult thing that you had to overcome in your life, and what is the most thing that you're proud of in your life?
Thank you, Vincent. I really appreciate that. And I see you. Like, I see the courage that it takes for you to share about your own challenges with pornography. Like, I can feel in you how challenging that is. And I see the lion heart, and I know, understand that it statistically is a really big challenge in our society. That, again, on how you said, like, you were looking for that validation from somebody else that ended up
Yeah.
being, temporary. And I applaud you for that. I find that's because
Thank you.
I feel like there's a lot of shame attached to, like, recognizing it's like, okay, maybe, like, not like, I've never gone through a 12-step program, but that's, in our culture quite often, of, like, admitting that you have a problem, that you're powerless against whatever your addiction happens to be. And with sex, like, I feel, again, the institutional structures have made, like, religion makes sex very shameful rather than as a natural process, a sacred process even. And there shouldn't be shame in that, in terms of wanting that connection and witnessing an act, but at the same time, that's, I mean, how the porn industry is actually implemented, right? Like, there's, that's what I mean by paradox. It's like, yeah, but there's a lot of exploitation and oppression in that industry,
Yeah.
right? Like, so, like, again, there's pros and cons with all of this, but to recognize that you're powerless, and to have courage and share with people that how that's influencing your relationships. So, well done. Like, I see you
Thank
as
you.
a leader, and I'm grateful to be here.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
You're welcome. Admirable.
But to go back on the question, what is the most difficult obstacle that you had to overcome, and the most, your most triumph that you had in your life that you really are really proud of?
And that's been a challenge for me too, because I have led an extraordinarily privileged life. Like, I've never really had to struggle with a lot of horrible things, like whether it's war or natural disasters, or, I've never been sexually abused. I've never been physically abused. I've never been homeless. I haven't struggled with major addictions, although there are issues of that in my family. But for me, it's, like I said, I was an environmentalist, and I see how the planet is being abused, and I see how people are being abused. And for me, I always had a lot of fear around speaking up.
Mhm.
And so, as I mentioned, with the network marketing, Legal Shield brought me to sales, and I went to Toastmasters, which is an international organization. Have you heard of Toastmasters? Have you ever been?
I heard, yeah. I
there?
never been, but I heard about it.
And it's fantastic. I mean, you can go to any city in the world and find a Toastmasters group, which I find is really powerful, to learn communication skills and leadership
Can
skills.
you? Oh yeah, I want to ask. Can you explain what it is, Toastmaster?
Yeah, absolutely. Because that was a pretty big outcome for me. So as a Toastmaster, you're given a manual. So they talk about, like, 10 steps to giving a speech. So they have you look at different elements of making a presentation. So it's like, just, having an icebreaker and talking about your story. But then it's ultimately learning about delivery in terms of your vocal variety, and, like, what makes people interesting to listen to. And I learned it's not about so much what I have to say, it's more about how do people receive what it is that I have to say. How does that make them feel? And it's about giving feedback as well. We learn to speak off the cuff. We learn about hand gestures and your physical body language and how you show up. And it's about every club, because there's, like, a global organization that I suppose administers the program, but every individual club in every city is volunteer led, which is really admirable. So every club is run by volunteers. So as you learn communication skills, it's a natural dovetail, mutual skill to learn to learn leadership skills. So I became part of the leadership executive committee right there as well, and I learned how to run a meeting. For example, we learned, like, secretary note keeping skills. We learned how to keep track of a membership. Like, we learn about marketing and public relations, and we learn about, education and how to execute an educational program amongst a group of people. Like, it was really cool. And then we would have social events, like a Christmas party and a summer party, and we would have like a charter party where we would have like a speech competition, and we would have a banquet, and we would have learn how to be funny. Like, what's humorous when you're presenting? Are you speaking to inform? Are you speaking to entertain? Are you speaking to inspire? Like, these are different motivations behind speaking. So I learned all of those things at Toastmasters and more. And really, where I'm proud of that, I took those skills and I built a community organization, Milton Green Environmental Association, and was applying and running community programs like movie nights and networking groups. And we'd have public speakers, and we would do native species plantings and invasive species removals and native species plantings. We would do litter pickups, right? So I took the skills and I applied it in community, and that was a real growth opportunity for me. And then the Green Party approached me and asked me to be a candidate, and that I did that in 2018 as a provincial candidate, and 2019 as a federal candidate, and that scared the crap out of me. Right? So it was a big achievement for me to step out of my comfort zone to represent my community and to challenge the narrative of the politics that were going on, and to see the community rally was really powerful, and that I'm proud of that I achieved that. So, but like, was that really a struggle? It was an internal struggle. Again, I understand that, a common value that people say in the world is like, well, pick yourself up by your bootstraps and figure shit out, right? And it's like, but that's assuming somebody has the privilege of having boots, and recognizing, again, the societal oppression that a lot of people in our culture go through, that it's not really visible in terms of how we treat minority groups. Like, I believe that white supremacy is a dynamic in this world, and that I feel like there's always more to learn about how we operate in this world, and how do we really embody, for me, so I'm training the apprentices of the Love Your Vibe transformation with a program, the JEDI program, Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, so that we don't perpetuate more harm in the coaching and the mentorship space. As I mentioned, there's a lot of that toxic positivity and that spiritual bypassing that goes on while ignoring real power dynamics in the world. And what is it to build resilience? What is it to overcome? And there are incredible stories of people who overcome having lost a limb, right? Or somebody who's been horribly sexually assaulted and can come through and become a sexual survivor, rather than just learning to survive and to thrive, pardon me, and to thrive in their life rather than just survive abuse like that. So everybody's story is valid.
Mhm.
And I feel like everybody's story can be inspiring. Everybody has something to learn, and everybody has something to teach, I feel, in this world. So thank you for sharing your story, and Vincent. And I feel like there's always inspiration, and when we feel seen, because we hold on to so much shame. I feel like that's a really big element of resilience. And how can we learn to love and accept and trust our own body? That's what I'm learning lately, is how to really trust myself, because I still hold on to levels of fear too, right? And like I said, it's heal or heal thyself. There's so many different levels of individual trauma, but there's intergenerational trauma. That is incredible, the concept of healing intergenerational trauma, pardon me. But even past life trauma, that's what we were chatting about in the back room, like learning past life trauma that's just an example.
It's a never-ending journey. People think, well, when I healed this, I'm done. Like, no, you have so much more work to do. It comes back again. It's a choice. If you choose with a porn addiction, for example, you're done. That's a choice, but you will find out that more things will come up. You're gonna attract bad relationships. You're gonna have like bad business deals or whatever, or maybe craving with food or social media. Always something comes up because there's a part of you that you need to heal. So I always feel like you're never done with healing, or you're never done with learning. So
Amen.
that's what I want to share. And Eleanor, thank you so much again for this amazing talk. I really, really appreciate the time for you being here. And
You're
the
very
things that you've shared, I've learned so much from you, and I hope the listeners also will learn from you as well, and also take something out of it and do something with it not just listen, but also take action. So yeah, thank you so much. So I'm gonna ask you a couple more questions, and then we're gonna wrap it up. The things that I want to ask you is, what are the 5 to 3 tips that you can give to men how to change their life? Is it what comes up and what you feel is important for men to start? What are the first steps that they can start to heal themselves, or to see a massage therapist? What can you give them for them to start on their healing journey?
Oh my goodness. Well, in the sake of time and the sake of the value of conclusion and repetition, I think we've said it already. Like, as you
Perfect.
said, it's being to recognize that you need to change, to make the choice to change, to have courage in your changing, to be the courage, be curious, to be curious about yourself, because I feel like when we tend to believe our thoughts. Don't believe everything you think. I feel is helpful knowledge, and choose to connect. So connection. I like the 5 C's that are evolving there. Changing but choosing, being courageous, being curious, and connect.
Perfect. Yeah, it's great. I agree with you what you said. So thank you so much for sharing. So Eleanor, again, thank you so much for your time. It's been a long episode, but I really enjoyed every second of it. I've learned so much from you, and I'm really grateful that you took the time to be here. So thank you so much. So how can the listeners follow you? Do you have social media?
I do. I'm more active on Facebook, but I have Instagram under Holistic Eleanor. Eleanor Hayward is my personal name. I think that's probably the most active part on Facebook. As long as you're a real person, you can be my friend. As long as you communicate respectfully. Also, my website, holisticeleanor.com.
Awesome. Yeah, I will put everything in the show note below, so you can follow Eleanor, you can follow me. And yeah, like I said, Eleanor, she's so giving. She's really from the heart. She really wants to help you from the heart, and really want to see you achieve. It's not like, okay, I'm gonna help you, you're gonna pay me, and now we're done. She will give you value, and she will help you go through it. And also Elvira, she's really amazing. So I'm really grateful for you for being here on the show. So I'm really appreciate for that. And before we're gonna take it off, you also had a free gift, right? For the listeners?
Yes. So a few months ago, we did the Miracle Mindset Invitation. So there is a link to a Google Drive that there's no expectations. There's 90 minutes of our conversation and a playbook that we created, the Miracle Mindset Playbook, and it's full of teachings and tools. I said, so 90 minutes of audio, and then the playbook is there for your reflection, for your healing, and for your inspiration to take some steps on your healing path. Thank you, Vincent. I'm really grateful to be here, and you're most welcome. Thank you, and let's keep in touch.
We will. Again, thank you so much, and it's been a blast. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you, and thank you everybody for listening, and all the best. Blessed be.
Absolutely. So guys, thank you so much for watching. And yeah, I hope this will bring you so much more value and really start to live from the heart, because that is the place where you want to start, and start healing yourself, because then it will bring you where you want to be. So guys, thank you so much. Eleanor, thank you so much, and take care.
Bye. Thank you.
Hey Lions, thank you for listening on this journey with me to reconnect with your heart. If you like the show, please like and drop a 5-star rating. And to help us keep the show going, consider supporting one of our affiliate offers. How do you raise your vibration? For an easy way to raise your vibration and support your health using biofeedback, check out the Healy tool. I'm a rep for it because I believe in frequency healing. Check the show notes for details. See you next time.